Hello. I would like to ask you some questions about Outcome 1 in the English course. I have read the book, and I was wondering about the sort of essays we will have to write.
Tell me a little about what you thought of Lahiri's short stories in The Interpreter of Maladies. Did you enjoy them?
It took me a while to see the point. At first they seemed to be a little depressing, but then I found that I really enjoyed the title story.
You mean Interpreter of Maladies with Mr. Capasi as the tourist guide?
Yes, it raised lots of questions about cultural dislocation. He completely misunderstood Mrs. Das and her interest in him.
And she completely misread his ability to interpret maladies. So what about the other stories? Did you enjoy them too?
I guess I liked most of them, and I could see that Lahiri has some important things to say about culture and life. But
you are wondering about the essay writing?
Yes. I often find writing essays a bit of a challenge.
Well, area of study 1 focuses on reading texts to examine the ways authors construct meaning. Your job is a bit like Mr. Capasi's. You are expected to interpret what is going on and try to explain what you think it means to someone else.
Okay, but what makes a good essay? I really want to do well in this course.
There are 5 things that I think are very important to remember.
5 things.
The first piece of advice I can give you is to spend some time talking about the book and the stories.
Talking?
Yes, talking and verbalizing your thoughts is an essential step many people skip. Of course, you need to chat with your teacher, or to a study group, or even an online friend or a relative. Someone who has also read the book and you can talk with about different interpretations and impressions.
Why is talking so important?
Essay writing is most of all about having something to say. Talking lets you explore your own reactions and ideas, so that when you see the essay question you will have opinions and ideas to work with.
What is number 2?
Read the code in the question.
Code.
If you look carefully at the sample essay in the course at the start of week 4, for example.
I am not sure about the wording of that.
The question asks, how do Lahiri's stories engage the reader to identify with the plights of her characters? Like every question, it has some code words which tell you what the question needs you to focus on. In this case, the most important word is how.
So the question is asking about the writing techniques she uses.
Correct. In the sample answer it explains that it is through the use of narrative voice as well as the use of closely observed detail to portray her characters that Lahiri ensures the reader's empathy for the people in her stories.
Okay, so that is why the essay looks at the role of the narrative voice first, and then at examples of closely observed details.
The third key point about essay writing is to decide which option to take. If the question offers an interpretation of the text, you always have options.
What options?
There are 3 options for any essay question. You can agree with the statement. You can disagree with the statement. Or you can look for ways to point out where the statement is not completely accurate in its observation.
You mean agree that the statement is partially correct, but point out where it is off target.
The third option nearly always gets better marks because it allows you to show a deeper understanding of the text.
So what is next?
I'm sure you know this one. Stay on task, don't just summarize the story. Use topic sentences to comment directly on the key concepts.
Is that teal?
Yes. It is a standard way students are often told to write essays. Essay questions are asking you about interpretations. Far too many students spend most of their essays retelling the story. You can assume that the teachers marking the essays know the story. What we are looking for is insightful comments and observations.
How can you tell if a student has used a teal approach?
One obvious sign is that the first sentence of each paragraph will use one or more of the key words from the topic in a way which makes a clear link to the question.
You said there were 5 things.
The final one is look at the wider implications of the question and the situations it relates to. You should consider whether Lahiri's stories are just about cultural dislocation, for example. What else do they have to tell us? Which story stands out for you?
I think I would pick the last story. The third and final continent. It was one that interested me. It is not just about cultural dislocation. The narrator notices a lot of things about the new culture he finds himself in. He also seems to cope very nicely with the change. He gets on well with Mrs. Croft, and the story is almost about the way that he sees the change as an opportunity and an adventure. In the last story we are introduced to a character who thrives.
Excellent. Lahiri has cleverly crafted her collection so that the most optimistic story is the last one. And you are right, Lahiri's stories are not simply about cultural dislocation. Essay writing is intended to be challenging. It allows you to show how much you have reflected on the texts, and to some extent it also reflects what you know about life.
Thanks so much for your time.